What's up, Soul Taken and Divers? Welcome to the Path of Hands with Phantology. We are covering Deadhouse Gate's second book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, written by Steven Erikson. This actually came out about 20 years ago in 2000. And we have Ryan, our resident Malazan expert, well, at least someone who has read all of the books. And Josh and I have read the first two only. So listeners, feel free to laugh as Ryan schools Josh and I as we try to make our way through this one. So what's up, guys? What do you think of the book?
Well, first of all, I'd like to preface that expert is definitely relative. Compared to you guys, maybe I'm an expert, but compared to many of our listeners, I'm probably average or even below average knowledge of Malazan. But besides that, I like the book a lot.
Yeah, I like this book. I mean, we're going to get into kind of issues I had with it, but overall, I liked it, I think, more than Gardens of the Moon. So,
judging by the pace with which you guys read the book, I would have assumed that you guys didn't like it.
Yeah, that is a personal problem that I had. It took me a long time to read this book. I mean, I think I started back in March or April, and it's now July. So it was like a 3 to 4 month process to read through this book. And here's my defense. I tried to listen to it, which really speeds up my pace, and I was unable to. I fell asleep every time I attempted to listen to it. Got zero understanding of what I was listening. So I read it. I actually physically read a book, which I don't always do. I have to admit. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the experience. I think I'm going to try to get back to it a little bit more. It's just hard to find the time with some books. But Deadhouse Gates, I'm really positive on. I finished it actually earlier this week, and I've thought about it quite a bit. And if you listen to our Crimson Campaign review that's coming out that Josh and I just recorded, I referenced Deadhouse Gate like 4 or 5 times, so I can't shut up about it.
No, it was even more than that, potentially. I mean, the amount that we usually reference Sanderson in these podcasts, Steven was referencing Deadhouse Gates that much in that episode.
That is impressive. So I guess, what were some of the similarities between the two books?
So without doing too many spoilers for either, I guess I'll say the main similarity was the whole Chain of Dogs plot, where you have a extended military campaign through enemy territory, and the Crimson Campaign, you know, the titular event of that book was pretty similar. I mean, there were many differences, but that was the main thing. And then there were some other things. There was we'll just say like crosses and crucifixion was a thing in both books.
Yeah, for sure.
Try to be vague there for now until we get into spoilers.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so my journey with reading this real fast, because you guys went through yours, I read like half of it in January of this year. For reference, we're at the ending of July. And then Steven hadn't made any progress with it. And so
yeah.
And so I was like, if I keep reading this right now, then it's just not gonna line up on our reading schedule. So then I went and read I put it on my kind of far back on my TBR, and then got through it about a month ago.
Yeah, this is, I have no excuse other than just a busy life. But look, I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to read the rest. This latter half of 2020, we are being completely spoiled with releases that are coming out. So I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to get to Memories of Ice, but I'm really looking forward to it, especially because I've heard that this one we go back to Genebakis and Drugistan and Dujek and all those other people that we got a lot of hints on in this book. So I'm excited to get there. I completely plan on getting through the rest of the series. I mean, at this point, right, there's 8 books left. So I guess we'll see what happens with my journey. And I probably shouldn't make many promises, because I broke a lot already in the speed that I promised to read this book. And
it's just like 10,000 pages left.
So I feel like we all had drastically different reading experiences for this book. I jumped into it almost immediately after I finished Gardens of the Moon, and I listened to it, and I didn't fall asleep But just like in my Gardens of the Moon podcast, I frequently would go and reference the Malazan reread of The Fallen, which is found on Tor.com, and I would clarify things as I would after I would listen to them on that, which I think helped me keep good pace and maintain interest and focus on what was happening in the books. So like I mentioned before, that's super helpful for however you're getting through this book, whether it's listening to it on Audible or reading it. It was a very helpful strategy for me.
Yeah, I think if Tor wanted to make some money, they could sell like SparkNotes editions of these books with the Tor rereads, like after every chapter, or a companion book. I don't know how the rights would work that if it was just like, if they're actually staff writers for Tor or they just volunteered. I don't know, but like, I would probably buy that book.
Spark Notes, Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Yeah, I like the Tor rereads as well. I think I struggled with them maybe a little bit more than you did, because when I try to read them, I end up just skim reading, and I have trouble convincing myself that I need to focus 100%. And so I don't get quite as much out of them. I just prefer to read the whole thing. So, whatever, to each their own, but I'm glad that we all made it through. So I guess we'll see where our journey goes from here. But I fully plan on continuing the series. And let me kind of take this in a different vein. I remember in the Gardens of the Moon podcast that we did a little bit ago, actually it was one of our earlier podcasts at Phantology, I remember saying something like, people say Malazan Book of the Fallen is so complicated, and I think that's overrated because I understood what was going on, blah, 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 like totally arrogant, right? I made some kind of comment like this. And I'm going to have to eat my words quite a bit here, because this book definitely, I think, even upped the ante from Deadhouse or from Gardens of the Moon. In Gardens of the Moon, we got hints at a lot of things going on, but for the most part, I understood that, that there were some minor things that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, epic fantasy, we'll get to it. But this book, I mean, there are entire plot elements where I'm just kind of dismissing and saying, okay, I know the names and places and events, and so we'll find out later. I'm just not even going to assume that I'm supposed to understand some of these things.
Yeah, this takes place in a different part of the world for the most part than Gardens of the Moon, as well as introducing almost an entirely new cast of characters. So what were your guys' thoughts on that when you read that?
That had already been not spoiled for me, because I don't think that's really a spoiler, but I was aware of that coming into this book.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew about that as well, for somehow, I guess maybe just in the summary, but I was okay with it. I think there were enough that, we still had Fiddler and Crocus and Absalar and Kalam were, I think, the main recurring characters. There may have been a few minors, but those four, there's like references to Quick Ben and Dujek. That was enough to kind of carry it along, and I felt like I got into the new characters really quickly, so I was fine just getting attached to a new cast. Felicin, Coltaine, my man Diker, probably my favorite. It's between Coltaine and Diker, I think, for my two favorites.
I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit disappointed when I first started this book and realized that it was a lot of different characters, because I was really looking forward to getting to know Whiskey Jack a little bit better and the Bridge Burners. And I think we do get to learn them a bit better, but it's from a different perspective rather than a first or third person perspective of actually experiencing it with them. We're hearing more about their history and about their lives.
Yeah, but I did like how that made it feel like they were an essential aspect of this world. Sometimes, and this is where Malazan shines, I feel like you get to hear about events somewhere else, and realize how big of an impact they actually had. Because even on worlds like Roshar, like, you don't really know how some events impact like things way away in like Stormlight, you know what I mean? But here you do, like continents away. So
yeah, I guess the world becomes extremely expensive extremely quickly. Like Josh with Roshar, the first book start in a more centralized setting. It moves around a little bit, but you don't know really what's happening from one side of the world to the other. And kind of the same with Wheel of Time. And then by the end, you're like, okay, we know everything about every different country, but we're in book 2, and 2 books, 2 continents. I'm assuming we're going to hit more in future books too. So you're right. It goes a lot faster.
I'm ready to get into the book. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, let's get into spoilers. Before we do, if you like Phantology, check us out at Phantology Books at our website, www.phantologybooks.com. Consider supporting on Patreon, join our Discord and chat with us, and please tell us what we missed in this podcast, because I don't even know what I'm going to miss, but I'm sure there's going to be something, and we'll have to apologize for it later. So join Discord, chat with us. We have a growing community there. We have merch. If you're into that, you can brand with some Phantology artwork from Mark Wells. And we've also started allowing for voice memos, and we're going to respond directly to fan submissions. So if you have questions, comments, you really like some part of the book and you want us to talk about it, we will do that in upcoming recordings. So on our Discord, we're chatting with people and letting you know what's coming down the pipeline. So we really want to engage with the community, and we are excited to do so.
Nice. Yeah. Easiest for voice memos, you can send that to us on Discord. If it's lower than the size limit, you can email us at phantologybooks@gmail.com. You can DM us in the tweets, whatever you want to do to get that to us.
Yeah, basically the internet exists and so do we. So if you know how to navigate the internet, you will find us if you search for the correct things. So let's get into the book. We always start with a content warning. So Malazan, in my experience at least, the content warning is interesting. There is swearing, but really there's not any hard swearing. I don't think there's any F words at all or anything much worse than that. There is certainly violence, doesn't shy away from that. There's almost no sexual content, or if there is, it's completely off screen. But reading the book just has this like real kind of gritty, dark feel, but I'm not really sure why, because it's not like a Joe Abercrombie where it's in your face. You just like, you're so ingrained in the world, I guess, that it seems like you are along this you're on this helpless journey along with the characters. I don't know, like, what do you guys think? Were you as into it as I was?
Yes, it was. I felt it as they're just making their way through the desert, and their supplies are getting lower and lower and lower, and they're getting harried on all sides by their enemies. It was a little bit depressing at times to read, I think, because of the situation that they were in.
Yeah, and overall, Malazan, I feel like it just has such a high, like the viewpoint is like very detached from the characters in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, and so you're looking down on like all these bad things, like gruesome things happening,
Okay.
right? And you're like,
just totally dispassionate.
I'm kind of like a drone shot. It kind of like if you're to picture a battle, like a drone shot of a battle is like what I picture Malazan as, versus like First Law, I picture it like you are holding the sword, like sticking it, you know, like you're in that point of view. And so those, they can both be gruesome, but they're just kind of gruesome in different ways. And I think Malazan does a good job of that, of establishing this still gritty scene, just much more detached from the actual characters doing the gruesome acts.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's incredibly immersive right away. I felt like every time I put the book down, I had to pick a bunch of sand out of my teeth because I had just emerged from the deserts of Raraku. Dang it.
Raraku?
Raraku. How do you say it?
Raraku.
Raraku. Okay, I'm going to get that from now on.
I'm not even going to try. I went to 3 years of speech therapy for my R's, so it's hopeless for me.
Raraku. So let's get into the plot. So I'm going to start us off in the prologue where we have Felisen, Bowden, and Hiborik. These are kind of our 3 characters through at least the first half of the book. They go on a journey of their own. and they are caught up in the current cull of the nobility that the Malazan Empire does from time to time. It starts off with this really vivid imagery of this priest walking down the road. He is covered in flies, and after they disperse, there is nothing remaining. So there's some magic going on right now. It's this really involved kind of disgusting scene, and it actually harkens really well to the very end of the book when something similar happens with crows. So I thought that imagery, first of all, awesome. I mean, black and black, but the crows play so much of a part in the book as well, and the flies just kind of set the tone for what's going on here. Perfect. Loved the start. And so our three characters here are having their possessions taken away and going on this forced march out of town. This is pretty similar to that scene in Game of Thrones. No spoilers, but you know what I'm talking about. The Walk of Shame. And they are taken to this otitoral mine at the edge of the Seven Cities in this place called Skull Cup. And Felicen, who is previously a nobility, I mean, she still is, but she's had everything stripped away. She is the sister of the current adjunct and also the sister of Perrin from the first book. So she has some role to play here, and we've seen her family a bit, but they kind of try to survive in this real harsh setting in Skull Cup. And I guess before I talk too much into their plot, like, do you guys love this opening as much as I did? I know it bounces around between characters, but let's try to just stay focused on these guys thus far.
Certainly sets the tone for the rest of the book. You have a priest of the god of death getting enveloped by flies and then disappearing, and then they literally have to fight their way through this crowd of people, just this mob who's bent on their destruction. It's very similar to what happens throughout the book. It's not the happiest book for sure, and we get the tone set right away.
And some of the people, they're all chained together. By the end, there's only like hands and arms remaining on the chains as the mob has ripped people apart. And Bowden, this brute thug guy, is how we understand him at the beginning, has basically ripped people apart to ensure their own safety.
And it certainly, our characters change a lot. Maybe not, they might not change so much as our perception of them changes, but Felicen is kind of this innocent young noblewoman who soon will, that changes, I guess, almost immediately in the Otiterral Mines. Bowden is this, yeah, like you said, a brute, and Eboric is a scholar, and they will transform. And I think that's interesting how you talk about the chain of people, and it's just kind of hands and arms, and that might hearken or lead into another chain that we'll find out about later in the book, the chain of dogs. Is that what it's called? I forget.
Yeah, the chain of dogs. Yeah, the imagery is really good, especially when you look back on it like we're doing. There are so many things that make sense throughout that he calls back to. So the change you talked about, the immediate change that I see was in, I guess you said Felicen, I said Felicen, whatever, but she immediately becomes a general snot to her friends who are trying to help her. She sells her body to survive. She is this beautiful young woman, and she makes use of her charms. This happens mostly off camera, like I was saying, but in order to survive in the mines, that's what she does. She gets very attached to the leader there, Benneth, and eventually they are able to escape due to some events that are kind of happening behind the scenes. And Bowden and Haboric almost leave Felicen behind because they think she is so far detached from them, and she just wants to like live out this crappy life of survival with Benneth in Skull Cup. But eventually she does make it, and they escape from the mines and make their way to the coast to try to meet up with some other characters. And this is when the apocalypse happens, and we will kind of get into that. But what did you guys think of Felicen? Because I kind of struggled with her. Like, everyone's just kind of united in thinking she's a total punk, right? For
Okay,
now.
hot take. Hot take.
Didn't take long.
Let's hear it.
This is my one hot take for this book. Okay. Felicity was my favorite character in it
Throughout.
Yeah.
Really? Even
Yeah.
though Haboric and Bowden are doing their best to rescue her and she is basically turning them down because she would rather stay with Bennett?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, this is, in my opinion, kind of believable Stockholm syndrome. Kind of Stockholm syndrome done right in a way. I don't know if you can ever do it right, but it's not like tropey, here you get kidnapped and then you fall in love with your kidnapper. Like, here's this guy that like is, yes, oppressing her, but like is kind of providing her safety. Like, it makes a little bit more sense, right, than a typical tropey Stockholm syndrome type thing.
Okay.
Okay. And I like felt like I understood why Felicien was doing what she was doing more than most other characters in this book. So did I like everything she was doing? Did I think that she wasn't obnoxious? No, I thought she was obnoxious throughout the book. I thought that she was like annoying, and it was kind of annoying reading about her sometimes, but like I felt like I understood her motivations more than a lot of other characters in the book.
So was it just that you didn't understand what was going on with the plot and with the characters? And then Felicien was someone that you could understand because she was
thanks for
very
the call
human?
out, Stephen. But yeah, I think it was more. I think she was a little bit more humanized than some of the other characters in the book. And I'm not trying to like trash on them or saying that they're like bad characters or anything, but like I felt like Felicien had more effort
She
put
had
into. Sorry, go ahead.
she had the same level of understanding of what was going on that we did as the reader. A lot of the other characters had sometimes millennia of backstory to
Yeah,
them, and so their actions didn't really make sense to us as the reader. But with Felicien, here she is, just a young girl in this world, way over her head, kind of the same way we're way underwater trying to read the book and understand what's going on. So I think I see what you're saying.
yeah, maybe that's it. And yeah, her thing was like, I'm gonna do what I need to survive. I'm like, and she did have some entitlement because she did grow up like in kind of like a royal setting, right? So like I think I can just understand why she is the way she is. Whereas a lot of the other characters, they're just told to me that this is how they are, and that works. I'm not saying that doesn't work, but I think I just understand her more, and if I read it more closely or whatever, I might have gotten that with other characters, but that's how that's what I came away with.
Does understanding make you like her more?
It makes me think. I didn't say I liked her the most, but I think I liked her character the most.
Your favorite character.
She was my favorite character in the sense that like I thought that her character was the best done character in the book.
I think Josh is just outing himself as an entitled noble. He really connects with that behavior.
No, I'm not saying I connect with her or like anything like that. I just feel like more time and effort was put into her humanizing her than some of the other characters.
I like that. Let's talk about some of the characters who aren't human. So let's go to Akarium, who is a half Jagged. And I honestly do not understand everything that's going on with the Jagged. I understand maybe Ryan can jump in here, but they are like one of the 4 founding races, yes, and they are pretty much all extinct. Later on in the book, we get some more details because there are some massive graves and old cities that they go through, and we did see a Jag in the previous book as well. That guy was a tyrant, which I'm assuming is a different type of Jagged, but Ikarium is half Jagged, so he's not nearly as destructive. Ryan, how'd I do there?
You got some things right. So yes, he's half Jagged, and there's a lot going on with Ikarium, and there will continue to be a lot going on with Ikarium throughout the books. He's a big, huge mystery that needs solving, and I think it's perfectly fine to go out of this book and still not really have a clue as to where he fits into the world, because you're going to learn a lot more about him later. And I think his character is very interesting, and his relationship with Mappo and their dynamic with Mappo being a friend and also a guardian to Ikariam, and I guess he's not so much guarding Ikariam as he is guarding the world from Ikariam.
And Ikariam from himself a little bit. That's how I read it.
Yeah, and getting back to the Jagged Tyrant from the first book, a tyrant isn't really like a different type of Jagged so much as I think it's a Jagged who uses their powers to become a tyrant and enslave other creatures who aren't as powerful as themselves.
I took that in the first book to be like tyrant with a capital T, like a different, fundamentally different type of being, but maybe that's wrong.
I mean, maybe it's that in using their powers, they set themselves apart and become a tyrant. I don't know, and set themselves into a different type of Jagged. I don't know. I don't think there's anything like physiologically different from normal
Okay.
Jaggeds and Jagged Tyrants. It's more that their actions set them apart, if that makes sense. At least that's
Okay.
my understanding of it.
Ryan, was one of your microbiology classes in Jaggeds?
Yes, I know all about Erikson published a textbook called The Physiology of the Jagged, and
I would believe you. If you said that, I would believe you. Sounds like he's put so much detail into this world.
yeah, yeah. So, and another thing that you touched on is, yes, the Jagged are one of these 4 elder races that are talked about a lot, and we don't know a lot about them, but most of them are extinct, and the Jagged are pretty close to extinction. They're very few and far between at the present time.
So I think I know all 4, and I swear I'm doing this off the top of my head and did not look this up before. We've got the Jagged, we've got the Talon Imas, we've got the Coltaine Kamale, or something like that, and we have the Fork Rail Asile. How was that? Did I
That was
get that?
excellent. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
the way the audible narrator pronounced it was the Coltaine Shamal. But I mean, we're splitting hairs at this point. I'm impressed that you remembered those off the top of your head because
Yeah, I'm killing it so far.
I did not know that. So
You're earning your Patreon money there, Steven.
That's right. Got to impress the listeners. So, like you said, Mappo has this interesting relationship with him. Mappo is a Trell, right? We call him Mappo, but he is a Trell is just like another race. They have green skin, I think, and tusks. Am I right there? And they are journeying together. And honestly, I'm not even sure what they're looking for at this point, but they are clued into this thing that's happening, this convergence of soul taken and divers, which are different types of shapeshifters. Divers are soul taken that can assume a lot of forms, or maybe they're different. I honestly don't know the complete difference between the two, but there is this path that these beings are trying to travel upon to find ascendancy, to become gods, and we don't understand very much about this. This is something that I wanted more of in the book. I'm assuming we will get more in future books. I'm told we will. Eventually, they make their way, after some fights, they make their way to this shadow priest temple, and Iskarel Pust, who is this enigmatic guy who he's a priest of shadow, and he speaks in riddles, and we don't understand him at all, really. Maybe you do if you know exactly what's going on. Maybe another read-through would make some of what he's saying make a lot more sense. But honestly, these guys, through the beginning of the book, I had zero clue what was going on.
yeah, he's a funny guy, Iskarel Pust, and he has a lot of significance to play in future books. Right now, he just seems like half crazy servant of Shadow Throne, which maybe that probably sums him up pretty well throughout the rest of the series too.
So let me just jump on my opinion about Ikariam. And I like this character a lot too. It kind of reminded me of of a similar situation in
Oh, you're gonna say Lycanius. Yeah,
Lycanius.
nice. Okay.
Yeah. So
Bet your marks.
without any spoilers there, um, I thought that was a similar trope done well on both series, and I like that mystery. I like that you're getting to know this character who seems to be like a pretty chill kind of guy in some ways, but like that there's this under the surface bubbling of like something needs to be contained here, and so I dug it for most of the book, and I enjoyed when he was on screen.
It doesn't help that he's also just unstoppable and can kill anything that he goes up against.
Yeah, but that's the point. Is you wonder, that makes you like him a little bit more, I think, because he's not out there just seeking out opportunities to kill people, right? He's like, don't fight me, because otherwise, it's not going to turn out well for you.
Well, and yeah, he could kill pretty much everything in his path, but at what cost? And that's why Mappo's there, is because he needs to stop. It's not good for anybody involved when Ikariam kind of becomes unleashed, because nothing can stop him. And so I don't know. It's sort of one of the main plot devices of Ikariam.
And we don't get that totally revealed until towards the end. But my understanding is that Ikariam has been around for millennia, and he has lost his memory through something, not really sure what, but in past lives, well, not past lives, but in like past iterations of himself, he had leveled entire cities and civilizations. And he currently is really peaceful and friendly and wouldn't hurt a fly except when he gets angry. So it's like a Hulk thing going on.
Exactly.
One other thing with Iskarel Pust that I didn't pick up on until the end when I was kind of preparing for the podcast, but he is obsessed with brooms and spiders throughout. And you don't get this until the very end, but he comes across with this divers who assumes the form of all these spiders. And this is actually his wife. And so the whole time he was being crazy, but he was also like trying to get rid of all these spiders. And so it was like this ongoing feud with his wife that was happening behind the scenes that you might not even have picked up on. So that was awesome.
My impression was that they meet at the end of the book.
Well, they do, but throughout the book, he's attacking spiders with his broom.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then he meets Megora, who turns out to be a diverse who can split into spiders.
Right, so that's my assumption that it was her the whole time. I mean, am I off there?
Oh, interesting. So I see. So you're saying that Megora is present throughout the book as those spiders, and he's like trying to bat them away?
It's either that or he's so paranoid that he's got to get rid of any spider he comes across with. I guess either could be true.
Oh, okay.
As far as I know.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true now that you brought it to my attention. Yeah.
I'm killing it, guys.
You're
I'm
killing
a Malazan expert. All right, let's go to let's go to my favorite two characters. So let's talk Coltaine and Diker. So Coltaine is the war chief of the Wiccans, who are this horse tribe, basically the Dothraki. And they are now part of the Malazan Empire after being conquered by the Malazans. And Coltaine is coming in as the new fist of the Malazan 7th Army. And he's just like General Bade and can do anything. And so he takes on the task of protecting all of these displaced Malazan citizens after the entire native population rises up during this apocalypse thing that's happening. We get a little bit of backstory before the apocalypse happens, but it's really once the apocalypse happens that the story begins. So this apocalypse is started by the goddess Dryjna, who I don't understand exactly what's going on here, but she seems to be like some kind of native spirit to the Seven Cities continent, or like all of the native populations are involved with her. She has this human avatar called Shaik, and Shaik is currently alive and requires this book to begin the apocalypse. And fortunately, Kalam, our favorite assassin, delivers it to her as part of his plot. And so once all these things happen, the entire native population rises up. They kick all the Malazans out, and everyone tries to kill them. But Coltaine is not going to let this happen, and thus begins the chain of dogs that is the most awesome part of the book for me. This is observed by Diker, who is the Imperial historian, who's kind of like a normal dude. He used to be in the army. He's kind of cool, but he actually gets a lot more cool as you see how courageous he is, because he's just a normal guy. And kind of like you said, Josh, like same as with Felicin, it's nice to see things through his eyes, because that lets you connect with these events that are going on. So what do you guys think of my favorite part of the book?
That was so crazy when Kalam delivers the book of the apocalypse to Shaik, and then she's supposed to open it and it'll start the apocalypse, right?
Right.
And she doesn't even open it, and the assassin who is following Kalam like kills Shaik with the crossbow.
Yeah, immediately killed.
And then
So
what?
expectations subverted. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, subverted expectations. And then later on, who walks out of the, I don't know, the dust storm, whatever, the dust settles and Felicin walks out, and suddenly everybody thinks Felicin is Shaik, and you're like, what?
Yeah, and that was a nice, I guess that would be jumping ahead a little bit, but
Okay.
let's not do that yet, because I kind of want to talk through some other characters, but I do like where you're going there. Josh, your reaction on maybe like just Coltaine's general awesomeness, or the whole situation with the chain of dogs. What'd you like here?
Yeah, I liked how this is one of those times where you look at a map and you see that this is like part of the Empire, right? But like it's not really. And I think that Malazan does a good job of helping you understand that like people are more than or that like cities are more than chess pieces. Like, although you might think that these are loyal subjects because of where they are on the map, that there's this whole vibrant culture that he's able to give you tastes of, and that culture informs what happens throughout the series. And so I like that. Yeah, the chain of dogs, I mean, the overall premise is really compelling, and Coltaine, he's awesome. He's like a character that's easy to like, right? Like he's powerful, he's a BA, like he's just pretty
He
awesome.
has zero flaws.
Yeah, he's like kind of, I don't know.
He's basically like Valen Alsorna.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even have a blood song to guide him, so.
Or does he? I mean, this guy's got something going on. He's too good. That's my opinion.
Are just super cool. Like you said, they're basically the Dothraki. Except how cool was the magic where Coltaine introduces I'm forgetting the warlocks, the Wiccan warlocks, and
Sormo Enath, I think.
Yeah, and they're like, whoa, we thought Lysine killed all those warlocks. And Coltaine's like, well, they did, but a bunch of crows came and took their spirits and put them in babies. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Sorry,
And talk about foreshadowing too.
Yeah.
That's the second time I've said like what in this podcast. So I'm gonna try and stop doing that. It's really cool foreshadowing and really cool use of magic, I think, where you have animals approaching and I guess taking the spirits of someone, transmitting them to a different body. But also lots of symbols of death in this book. You have flies, you have crows, you have what else? I'm sure there are others.
I mean, you have literal shadow demons with one eye, and people being brought back to life all the time.
Yeah, you have Hood. You guys know? Do you guys know who Hood is yet?
Yeah, he's the god of death, right?
Yeah, Hood is ever present in this book.
So back to Coltaine really fast. I like, in my head, he was like Viggo Mortensen in that movie Hidalgo. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a good movie.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was because I was so like young when I watched it that I thought every movie was a good movie.
No, confirmed it is a good movie.
Okay. Yeah. So that's like in my head who that character was, and like nothing could really change that. So
I imagine him wearing more black, and he's also got a feather cape of crows that he wears. He's probably a little taller in stature, maybe a little more muscular, but I see where you're going for there. And the
yeah,
setting fits perfectly because it's
yeah.
like a
Well, that
constant
might be
sandstorm.
why. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just this baller who's like in the desert, like kicking butt. I don't know.
So I googled Coltaine just now.
Oh no, I am I just so wrong?
There is no. I think you guys are similar. He's kind of like this stoic, like dark character with feather cape, similar things. But I was more interested in this YouTube video called "This is for Coltaine." Music inspired by the story of Coltaine and the Chain of Dogs from the Deadhouse gates.
Gonna have to give that a listen. Yeah.
Yeah, after this podcast, we should give it a listen, and maybe it should be the intro music for this episode.
Oh
Hey,
gosh.
okay. If it's good, I'm down to swap our intro music for that.
Yeah.
So let's pause on these guys as they try to survive this terrible situation. And let's go back to some characters that we already brought up. These are our friends from the first book, Crocus, Fiddler, Kalam, and Apsalar. They're coming to 7 cities with the dual intents of bringing Sari, Apsalar, back home, but also really to assist Kalam in his attempt to assassinate the Empress of the Malazan Empire. So yeah, just a casual trip here. And Kalam gets involved bringing this Book of the Apocalypse back to Shaikh. And he kind of does this, in my opinion, or in my recollection, he does this because of his 7 cities roots, and he kind of like sees it as his duty a little bit. And this really sets events off. He's tailed by this Red Blade assassin, and that person immediately kills Shaikh. Her name is Lostra Yil, in case you were wondering. And
the narrator of the audiobook, who is obviously the ultimate authority on all things pronunciation, pronounces her name Lostara Yil.
yeah, I forgot the T. I'm sorry. Anyway,
Unacceptable,
Kalam also acquires a shadow demon casual. This thing is named Aptorian. It's got one eye. I just basically imagine like some kind of dinosaur, like Velociraptor / T-Rex. Maybe like what's the really cool T-Rex that they make in some of the later Jurassic Park movies? That's what I imagined. Yeah, sure. We'll go with that. Yeah. Well, no, Blue is just a Velociraptor, but I'm thinking of the T-Rex Velociraptor hybrid that they make with the long arms, not this.
that also has like DNA of like lions and stuff in it.
Rex or something.
Yeah, the Indominus Rex. That's basically Aptorian, and so the Kalam's off on his journey separately. He ends up journeying through this shadow realm. He does a bunch of cool things, and Crocus, Fiddler, and Apsalar are kind of on their own. They journey through the desert for a while. And eventually they meet up with Ikarium and Trell and Mapo Trell, who are still at the Shadow Temple with Iskrael Pust. And that's kind of where we'll leave them for a hot second. And let's go back over to Felasin, Bowden, and Haboric, who are on the coast looking for rescue. And they are picked up by Culp, who is our token sorcerer who's going to be sacrificed horribly in this book. And they get picked up, they get drawn into this sorceress battle and dropped into this magical warren and board this undead ship called the Solanda. And this is where I completely lost track of what was going on, because what is this, Ryan?
Yo, come on. You didn't ask me, Steven?
Which part?
Okay, Josh, what is it?
Okay, Ryan, what's going on?
I think I was okay with the plot of our heroes from Gardens of the Moon. But once we got into this undead ship crewed by these Tisti Andi, who were all beheaded and their heads were piled up, but their heads were like still alive, and they started the drums going and they started moving again. I mean, we're basically into Pirates of the Caribbean here, but even more intense.
Isn't it awesome?
Oh, it's awesome, but I have no idea. I have zero clue what to expect from this.
Okay, so
Part of why it's awesome is you're just You're just like on a train witnessing all of this crazy stuff. You're like, how is he fitting all of this into one book?
So this is when it really started to feel like you can understand why, this is like D&D that they just like expanded the world of and like wrote into a book. This feels like a D&D campaign where the dungeon master is just like, screw it, I'm putting them on a ship with headless people now. Like that's just kind of what it felt like to me. Like with no rhyme or reason for how they got there, really. It's just like, oh, cool, now we're going to this really imaginative, cool setting.
Man, if this was a D&D campaign, there were a lot of critical failures and critical successes, a lot of nat 1s and nat 20s in this one.
Yeah, a lot.
I mean, this is drinking from the fire hose, You're witnessing small parts of this world which Erikson and Esselmont created together, and so he's giving you bits and pieces, and you're gonna have to wait until book 10 to get most of the pieces put together.
Are you kidding me? Book 10 for most of the pieces?
Well, you're going to get bits and pieces throughout all of it, and I think you'll probably start putting most of them together by book 7 or 8.
Okay, yeah, just 7 or 8.
It's a commitment.
Steven, oh yeah, I'm going to finish the series, no problem. I got this.
No.
It's only 8 more books.
No. I'm really into it right now, but at the same time, that is interesting to me. I would expect answers to be doled out in doses, like into book 3 we get some questions answered but more raised and so on, but you're saying like nothing until that late in, Ryan?
No, I'm not saying nothing. I'm saying that you get tons of bits and pieces, but it doesn't really start to make a cohesive whole until the later books, I guess is what I'm saying.
So like if you're doing like a jigsaw puzzle, it's kind of like you're turning over all the pieces, and then you're like starting to do the corners, and then you're starting to like fit little patches together.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
And then someone comes over and does a table flip on your jigsaw puzzle.
And then
And you have
somebody
to
chops your head off and uses you to build the puzzle in an undead form without using dark magic that you don't understand.
Going dark, Ryan. Going dark. I like it.
I feel like we just got a spoiler for something in the series.
I mean,
Well, we were just talking about
magic involved.
Yeah, we were just talking about undead crewmen with their heads chopped off. It fits.
Or did
All right.
did you miss that?
No. No. I got it, Ryan. We were just talking about it, but I feel like that's going to happen with a character we like or something. I don't know. Let's just move on.
This
So
will be explained further later on. Raffo.
It better be.
Okay.
We're on the Solanda for now. A lot of things happen here. I'm probably going to miss some details. There's going to be some important things that I gloss over. But my understanding is that, and so the Talani Mass, come on, there's a group of Talani Mass that come on. They kind of do some magic stuff. And then there's a undead dragon that comes through. Some of the people that are there, some of our humans, are now embarking on the path of ascendancy because of the way that they've come into contact with the Warrens and the magic here. There's a rent torn in one of the Warrens, and in this pretty cool scene, the ship catches on fire. Our characters are able to escape through the hole in reality, and they land into Raraku. Got it that time. They land there, and that's where they continue on. And it's like nothing ever happened as far as the Solanda plotline. The Solanda does show up later on and plays a minor role in ferrying some wounded, but we don't hear from it. And we're not really sure what any of...
Just you wait.
I've heard it comes back. People on Discord were saying it will come back, so I'm looking forward to that. I also thought it was cool we had the dragon going through. So, we saw in the first book, Animander Rake turned into a dragon. Maybe this is him. Maybe there are other people who can turn into dragons.
It's an undead dragon, if I believe. I remember.
It is an undead dragon. So I guess you're probably telling me that Steven Rake is not undead, so it's not Rake. But maybe it's someone else who can turn into a dragon.
Did you call him Steven Rake?
No, you're saying Steven, it's not Rake.
Oh, yeah. Well, Animander Rake does not transform into an undead dragon. We know that from the first book. So
Duh. Yeah.
Come on,
we
Steven.
should
put two and two together.
we should
even
have
I know
remembered that. Yeah.
Do I need to spell things out for you? Just kidding.
You probably do.
Yes.
So yeah, you'll learn so much about Warrens, where they were when they were sailing in the Solanda. It's pieces of a greater whole.
Looking forward to it. And we do pick up more on Warrens in this book. Warrens were a complete question mark for me. In the first book, I feel like I understand them a bit more. In this one, especially towards the end when they're into Tremolor. So getting kind of into that plot, Mappo and Icarium and our heroes from Genebacus are now all together with Pust. And they learn that Pust's servant, whose name is Servant, is actually Apsalar's father through kind of a weird thing going on here with Shadow Throne. And then they all kind of take off into the desert, seeking Tremolar, or also trying to follow Apsalar and her father, who have taken off. And initially it's hinted that they are setting up Apsalar to become Shaik, which makes sense for a lot of reasons. But we learn that that is not actually what's going to happen. In fact, they end up getting to Tremolar, which, correct me if I'm wrong here, Ryan, but Tremolar is a warren, and the Azoth house that we saw from the first book in Darujistan that appears there at the end of the first book. There are many of these throughout the world, and they're all connected through Tremolar, which is like this passage through space and time. It's kind of like the Ways a little bit in Wheel of Time, except maybe even more dangerous. I mean, the Ways are way dangerous because of Match and Shin, but here we've got a little more corporeal enemies chasing after you. So this part, the main takeaway for me here was I thought it was cool that they were setting up Apsalar to become Shaik, but they turn the tables on us when Felisin comes in with Hiboric and assumes that mantle.
Wow, so that was one big question.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole book was a bit of a question, but what was your reaction to all of that?
So I'm trying to. So Tremorlore, as I understood it, is the name of an Azoth house, and
One individual house?
yes,
That house in Seven Cities.
yes.
Okay, so
That is that's an Azoth house, and I believe that Azoth houses have their own warren.
each one does, and they're connected somehow?
Yeah, that's actually a part that I don't understand 100%. So, I could certainly, you've caught me. This is a hole in my Malazan knowledge.
Ryan, come on! I thought you understood everything. We'll look this up afterwards. We might add this to our Patreon correction video. But I mean, as far as the Tremolor stuff, that was cool. But what do you think of the misdirection with Shaik? Were you guys as into this as I was? I thought it was cool.
You know, I didn't remember it super well, but now that you bring it up, I do remember thinking that Apsalar was going to become Shaik, and then boom, 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 expectations subverted, and who becomes Felisin but Josh's favorite? I mean, who becomes Shaik but Josh's favorite character, Felisin?
Yeah, Josh, this is your favorite character. Tell us about this.
Well, you know, this is when it started to kind of lose me a little bit, because the same thing happened to Sari, like where, you know, it feels like you have this character that's kind of relatable, and then they just get made into a god or something, you know, or possessed by a evil, you know, assassin demon thing, you know, like it seems like you get these characters that you're able to relate to, and then they get their whole persona changed because of something that happens to them, and they're made cooler, like on paper, but I don't know how well that translates into actual cooler as a character.
I mean, Sari, I feel like Sari, for most of how we knew her in Gardens of the Moon, was possessed by
Yeah. That's, I mean, I was just conflating that.
becomes normal.
yeah, I was just conflating the two, right? Like, but I feel like I feel like Felicien was kind of like Absalar, only done like in reverse, kind of.
Yeah, a little bit. She doesn't. I think she kind of changes gradually. At first, you think, "Oh, this is the Felicien that we've known and loved for the whole book," but then
Well,
she
me loved, you guys not so much.
I was saying it a bit sarcastically.
Okay.
But then as we keep going with time, you see how she's starting to change a bit and actually become Shaik.
Okay.
At first, when I read, I thought this was kind of a misinterpretation that Felicien wasn't actually Shaik, that there was something she was gonna pretend to be Shaik, and then somehow it would turn out bad for her later. But
It seems like Dryjna like reluctantly accepts her to become Shaik, and then by the end of the book, she's full on avatar of the goddess. But she seems to maintain a little more control over her actions than Sari does.
yeah, well, I mean, on one hand, it's basically Cotillion controlling Sari.
Right.
So Sari doesn't really, she's not controlling herself. On the other hand, Ellison is herself, and then I think she gradually starts to take on the aspect of Shaik. So she becomes more and more like Shaik as Drijna kind of influences her.
So one is like a Luz Theron Randall Thor situation, whereas the other is like a possession almost.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But maybe we might
I
get
don't know.
some pushback. Yeah. I mean,
Like you have a person influencing you but not controlling you, whereas the other one is like you're
yeah.
not really in control of yourself. Okay. All right. We can move on.
Actually, so one other thing before they get there, Felicien and Haborik have this encounter with Grillin, I think is the name of this rat divers that tricks them and literally devours Culp and Bowden, who reveals himself to actually be a Talon assassin. And the Talon were even before the Claw crew of assassins. So this happens right before they actually make it to Shaik. Just thought I'd mention that because that was kind of a chilling turn of events there. It was tough to see our guys be devoured by these rats. Ugh.
Yeah, that was a surprising moment to say the least, where Culp, I kind of liked Culp, and he's, starting to figure something out, something's fishy, and then all of a sudden, wow, he's rat food.
It's basically like the who's the puppet from the first book that they bring back, the mage that they kill off at the very beginning.
Oh, I'm blanking on his name.
I mean, they were different types of characters, but also sacrificed mages.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely different types of characters, but Culp was definitely more likable than the other one.
I liked Culp more, but Erikson doesn't shy away from killing some of these guys. I mean, let's just get to the end here. And speaking of guys who their fates may not be the greatest, let's go back to our chain of dogs, and Coltaine and Diker and the rest of our guys here are now winning a series of very difficult battles. We could probably talk about this more in depth, but they are making their way towards Aran, which is like thousands of leagues away on the entire other side of the continent. They have several different enemies and clans to overcome, and they do every time using a combination of explosives and natural spirits of the land and just general being better warriors and better organized and exploiting all of their tiny little advantages. So this part, I mean, like I said, this is kind of what I was here for in this book for the most part, and pretty much loved every page of this plotline.
Yeah, although despite all the outmaneuvering and the better tactics and better training, things continue to look grimmer and grimmer and grimmer.
Yeah, we're almost towards the end, so let's get into the conclusion for each of our group's plot lines. So let's just continue with these guys. So they continue to limp along, like Ryan said, gets grimmer and grimmer, and they have some encounters with the Solanda. They have an encounter with this crazy Daru merchant who shows up out of nowhere. This was one of my more like what the heck moments in this series. Shows up in this giant carriage pulled by these huge horses, and they bring them some supplies at a very opportune time. Total Deus Ex Machina here. But I thought it was done okay because we learned that it was at the request of our friends out in Genebacus. So there must be some way that they know what's going on. I guess we'll get that in future books. There was another Deus Ex Machina that I said on Discord I didn't like as much, and that was where one of the tribes just kind of turned on everyone else and said, we respect the Wiccans the most. You guys are the strongest. And like, I get it, but at the same time, I don't get it because I didn't feel like there was enough of an explanation to me of who the different tribes were and what their interaction was with Dryjda and how the whole apocalypse thing worked. Because my impression was that just every person out there on the continent wanted these guys dead. And then all of a sudden, okay, we like you, so we're going to help you out. That one I wasn't quite buying. But other than that, I was way into all of these victories.
I could see why you would think that these seem like Deus Ex Machina because they might not have been set up very well beforehand, like you mentioned. But I think looking back, it doesn't reflecting from where I am at in my vast Malazan experience. I don't see it really as a Deus Ex Machina, but I can sympathize with you.
All right, so you're calling me a noob.
Yeah, you noob, you Malazan noob.
So eventually it doesn't work out for him because they get to within sights of the gates of Arin, and they actually get all of the surviving refugees. A lot of these guys get killed, but like a significant chunk of the refugees make it all the way across. So very well done. Unfortunately, in order to do this, Coltaine has to sacrifice himself and basically all of the Wiccans. And in one of the more frustrating this was a good moment, but at the same time, it made me want to throttle some of the characters, specifically Malik Rel and Pormqual, the cowardly high fist, because these two Malik has done this out of, he's evil, but Pormqual is just an idiot, and they have prevented the army from Arin to go out and help them long enough to where Coltaine is overwhelmed by the forces of the apocalypse and killed, and they start to crucify him, and they're going to prevent his soul from leaving. But this dude comes up onto the battlements, legendary archer or whoever this guy is, maybe just some random soldier who's a good shot, and he kills Coltaine. His soul is released into the crows, and that is the foreshadowing that I was talking about. So Malik Rel, evil, obviously. They call him the Gistal priest. We're not exactly sure what this means. Has something to do with a specific order of magic or something. I guess we don't know yet. It was hinted at briefly, and then
who's the god of the seas?
Sure, and he's evil because he was responsible for killing Coltaine, which I cannot forgive him for.
Cue Lincoln Park in the end, where it's tried so hard and come so far, but in the end,
ouch.
Oof.
But it did matter because
it did.
The refugees were safe, but then stupid Lord Palmqual or whatever, just a total inept commander, makes all of Coltaine's maneuvering almost kaput. And
yeah, this guy might have been even less likable than Malik. I mean, at least Malik was competent. This guy's an idiot. He gets totally outmaneuvered. I don't know how he got to be High Fist in the first place. Eventually, he gets what's coming to him as he gets beheaded as Malik betrays everyone from Arin as well, except for a few who are smart enough to survive. And then he initiates a mass crucifixion of all of our surviving Malazan people here that get put into this trap, including Diker, my other guy. So Coltaine and Diker both killed horribly.
So,
Ugh, this
so
was a
real quick,
tough
let
ending
me
for me.
jump in here. Was this not just like a total kind of Christ moment with Coltaine, like leading these people through the desert? I mean, that's like more of a Moses thing, but then like gets put up on. Was he on a cross? He was kind of on a cross, right, or just on a
Yeah,
pole or
or
something,
at least a pole of some kind. Yeah.
right? And then like he is suffering there, and then he dies, and then like his soul like just kind of
Yeah.
ascends into heaven, right? Like after he led, all these refugees
Yeah.
through the wilderness. That was kind of on the nose a little bit, I think.
I mean, you're combining a few different biblical things.
Well, right, but yeah.
I don't. I mean, I didn't really relate it too much to like a Christ-like figure. I mean, there's the crucifixion aspect of it, but I mean, I guess he's kind of resurrected too. I don't know. I didn't really put that together when I read it.
I'm seeing it now, though. I mean, it's pretty on the nose from what Josh just said.
Yeah, I was really worried though, because when all the crows were trying to get to Coltaine to carry his soul away, they were. I forget what were they shooting them down with arrows or blasting them with magic?
There was a magic. Yeah.
Magic blasts. We're stopping the crows. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, no, Coltaine needs to live on.
Right. And so that's the good news. It seems like Diker and Coltaine will be coming back in some form, uncertain. It seemed like Coltaine was coming back kind of similar to how Tattersail is starting to come back at the end of the first book. Like his soul is being reborn. We see a pregnant woman who, the crows like come to her and she feels the soul come into her, something like that. Diker had this other kind of Deus Ex Machina thing, this like magic genie bottle that he was wearing around his neck that you were wondering what this is the whole time. It came from the Trigal Trading Guild as well. And then at the end, what was it? It was like servants of Baruch, I think. The Bacarala came and they get the magic bottle and Diker. And so I think he's coming back. It seems like it.
I guess we'll have to read and find out.
It's like a Chekhov's gun thing. We've seen it, so now we know he's going to come back in some way.
I think that you've touched on an important thing, Steven, which is if you are reading Malazan Book of the Fallen and you are very much a supporter of dead means dead, no coming back, then you're not going to like these books. I think I mentioned this in our Garden to the Moon podcast, that death and life are both very fluid concepts in this series. You have people who die and come back. You have people who die and aren't quite dead, like the Talani Mas. It's just a very, very fluid concept, and so I would hesitate to think that people who die are permanently dead. Just don't be surprised if they come back in one form or the other. I think just Erikson uses it as a plot device much more than other authors do, and so you should kind of come to terms with it sooner rather than later.
Well, but he also has like kind of settings, like the spirit world, soul world is kind of like a setting, right? Like you go meet the gods of death and stuff. So it's baked into more than other books where it's just like, oh, this guy was dead, but now he's not,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. Do we know of a thing that like, if it happens to you dead in this book, kind of like
Balefire?
Yeah, like Balefire or like Shard Blades. And
Shard Blades may or may not kill you depending on which revision of Words of Radiance you read.
Oh, dang, that's a good point.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I always wonder because yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I'm gonna leave that question unanswered because I don't know.
Ryan, I love how you're petting your cat right now, discussing like ultimate death. You kind of
It's secondhand nature now when you just cats come up and they demand to be pet, and you're just like, oh, okay, you don't
you,
even think about
you
it.
you don't want to be dead, so you pet your cat.
They have me well trained, I will say.
All right.
So let me just close this conversation with the great words of House Greyjoy, the Ironborn. What is dead may never die. And I assume that's what we'll see in the rest of the series. So I like that. I think, like you say, Josh, it's baked in enough to make it believable. So a couple other, let's wrap up the two other outstanding plot lines here. So our group of heroes is now in the Tremolar Warren / Azos house. However, I understand it. I obviously don't understand it completely, but they make their way through. They fight all these enemies who are being imprisoned here. It's kind of like how I see it a little bit like the way that the Forsaken are held in the Dark One's prison. Like they're almost encased in this, in this case, it are these vines that are writhing around these powerful enemies and they're trying to get out. And they do to some extent, and there's a lot of fighting that happens. They finally make their way into the house, which is opened by Crocus's Bacarala, who is very conveniently there, kind of another Deus Ex Machina a little bit. Didn't exactly understand what's going on here, but they say that it's a demon. It might be like Baruch is being reborn because we saw him die at the end of Gardens of the Moon. I'm not sure, but it works out for them.
Not Baruch. It's Crocus's uncle.
Yeah, isn't that Baruch? Oh yeah, Mammoth. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so we'll see what it comes to play there. Anyway, they make their way into the house. They end up in this like world where you can access any different part of it by falling through different tiles, and the group all separates, and Crocus and Absalar and Fiddler make it to Mala's city, where they meet up with Kalam, who has made it there as well after a long journey, and he has been betrayed and is fighting against all of these Claw, and he eventually makes his way to a final confrontation with Lacine. And I had no idea what to expect. Like, I thought anything could happen here, getting into this climax at Mala's city.
Oh my gosh, this book has so much stuff.
There's a lot.
We could do 2 full episodes easily talking about all of this stuff.
We could do way more than 2. We're trying to cram it into 1.
Yeah. So what did I think about the confrontation with Lacine? Well, it blew my mind because Lacine is set up as just like an evil empress who isn't competent, and the empire is just kind of going downhill since she took over. After her conversation with Kalam, you see her side of things a bit more. How she really saw Kellenbed and Dancer as her friends, and I think it kind of broke her heart to have to betray them, but she was trying to do what was best for the emperor, because though they were good conquerors, they wouldn't be good rulers. And so she certainly becomes a more sympathetic character at that point. And so that was pretty crazy, and so much so that Kalam, who has marched across the world to bring Lacine's reign to an end, kind of out of revenge, he decides not to go through with it.
Yeah, so that was tough for me. Like Kalam coming all this way, and I don't know, like maybe I just don't know his character well enough or understand his character well enough to know if this was fitting or not. But this was, I don't know if, like, I had a lot of mixed emotions with reading it. I was like kind of let down that he didn't just go through with it. I feel like if this was a Joe Abercrombie book, he would have just gone through with it. Like, right. Like,
yes, screw it. Might as well just be realistic about this and kill him anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so just that she could explain it all away with like saying, yeah, it broke my heart to do these things, and there were reasons. I don't know if I bought it.
I think I have something that might redeem this for you a little bit. So I read this as a few different, there were some undercurrents here to the conversation. one big thing is she's not even really there.
Yeah,
She's
right. So
talking
she
through
was
an
safe no
animated
matter what.
corpse. Yeah,
Right.
and he realizes this. I don't think she knew, or I'm not sure if she knew that he realized it or not, but he did. Kalam realized it. He realized there was no way he was going to be able to kill her anyway. So I don't know if he bought everything that he was saying, maybe some,
So he
but
just didn't
not
want to play his
all.
hand.
And so, yeah, I don't think he wanted to play his hand here. I think he was maybe like waiting for another opportunity, or he wants to investigate some of these things before he proceeds with his mission. But if he was to like rush forward and try something, who knows what could have happened, because if she's powerful enough to talk through an animated corpse, like anything could be waiting. Maybe even Kalam, who is pretty much unstoppable as well, might not go too well for him here. So that's how I interpret it. And that's why I was okay with it, because I'm with you, Josh. If Lasine was just to be able to talk her way out of it and Kalam walks away peacefully, that's lame. But if there is another undercurrent and reason why it's happening, then that's cool.
Yeah. And I did come away with that too, of like, oh, well, he wouldn't have been able to kill her anyway, but I didn't pick up on the fact that he realized that. Like, I didn't know when he realized that, I guess. I didn't realize that made his decision for him. So
it must have at to some level, and I don't think we're entirely sure. At least I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like it influenced it.
Okay. All right. I didn't hate the scene. Regardless, I thought it was a well-structured scene. I thought you got some big payoff moments with how the scene was structured, and the emotional impact that it had on me as a reader was still prevalent. So
that's pretty much the book. There's a few loose ends to tie up here. I don't think we're going to get to all of them. We have some characters who we think are coming back. We have Felicin is full on Shaik now. She brings her army to Arin. They end up going back into the deserts of Raraku, and Tavor's army is approaching 7 cities as well, so we're probably going to get more of a showdown here between these forces in future books. Sounds like Memories of Ice takes place back in Genebacus, so I think we're going to press pause here from the people we know, at least maybe some of them. I don't know. Anything could happen, really. But that's a wrap for the book, and let's go into our worst of the best segment. We just have a few minutes here, but we're just going to briefly talk about something that was our favorite, but like one little thing that kind of nitpicked on us enough to the point where we were like, that could have been better, but it was still cool, but maybe it could have been better. I tend to kind of talk myself out of my worst things if I talk for long enough, which you can tell I'm kind of good at. But Brian, Josh, already. Yeah, you guys have a worst of the best for us?
Let's hear, Josh.
All right. For me, the way that Felicin's story arc progressed and changed kind of so fast. Like, I talked about how she was my favorite character, and I think that's because at the beginning of the book, we were allowed to sit with her and get to know her as a character without plot just happening around her like all the time. But then that started to change, and so that's kind of just out of the whole book, not one specific instance. But I kind of wish we could have left her in more of a static setting and gotten to know her character better before just throwing her into, like I talked about earlier, these plot things happening to her.
Ryan, you have one? I like that one, Josh. There's really no time. There's no time to press pause and just learn about someone like you would in some other epic fantasy where we're sitting around chatting for extended periods of time.
I do not have one. It was all amazing.
It was all the best for you. Okay, I have one. I kind of talked about some of the Deus Ex Machina that I didn't like quite as much. Ryan called me a noob for doing that, so I'm not going to go to that. But I'm going to say my worst of the best was the word ochre or ochre, however you pronounce it. That word is in this book way too much. And I really love this setting. I love the desert setting. I could picture it so much. But like every page, okay, not every page, but at least every chapter, the desert or some color was described with the word ochre. And I think that you don't need to be quite as verbose as Erikson likes to be. I mean, it shouldn't take a thesaurus to read this book. Sometimes a dictionary. Well, it would be a dictionary if you're trying to read it. He probably used a thesaurus, or maybe he's just incredible with his wordplay and has an amazing lexicon. And I'm trying to throw out big words that I know right now. to get revenge here. But I thought it was too much, and let's just come up with some simpler ways to describe it and make it like a little more accessible. I feel like the plot itself is already difficult enough that the sentence structure, and I'm even going further into the writing, but sometimes the sentence structure bugged me, and the just the word choice was too much. And I'm on a full-on steam head. I have a full head of steam here into my rant, but I think the writing was like not my favorite technically. So that's my worst of the best. Loved a lot of it. Loved the plotting. Loved the setting. But like the actual details of it, like I could nitpick it.
Hot take from Steven.
I never noticed the word ochre.
It's in there way too much, man. Do like a find on the Kindle app or something. I'm gonna tell you there's at least 30 uses of that word. And that's a word that's like maybe not in other fantasy series at all in the entirety. Like, does that word appear in the Wheel of Time at all? I don't know. Probably not.
And are they able to survive as a fantasy series without the use of that word, Steven?
Yeah, well, they are. But and I know I'm being overly critical, but I think I'm just trying to say that this is an example of what really kind of bugged me about the series a little bit, is that the writing is too complex and makes it too inaccessible. And I think that there exists a series that's written with the same level of plotting complexity that has everything that Erikson is going at, but also is easier to read. So I could actually listen to the book and not have to focus quite as hard. And that's what put me straight to sleep.
I just did it. I looked up ochre in my Kindle app.
Yeah, how many?
You said 30, Josh?
I said 30.
Well, I don't know. I didn't even notice the word, so let's just.
So Josh is saying under.
Well, no, yeah, under 30.
24.
Oh, okay. Well, Josh wins. But come on, that's pretty good.
Well,
that's pretty good.
That is a more accurate guess.
Surprised.
Yeah, that is a more accurate guess than I would have been able to make.
I was surprised by how much that appeared.
So rant justified. Rant justified.
I
Yeah.
would say
Well,
that
rant is accurate. I don't know about justified. I mean, I don't know if that really hurts the writing quality of the book.
I think it does because it makes it hard for people to read.
Okay. Yeah. And
All right.
yeah, okay. I don't think a little bit of pushback. I don't think his sentence structure and his use of the word ochre is what makes Malazan hard to read.
But it makes it harder.
I don't know. It's like if you're on like a hard hike and like.
And there's
like
also a rock in your shoe the whole time. That's
no,
bugging you.
it would be like, I don't know, and you have the wrong type of sunscreen, or that you don't like it smells weird.
I think
like that.
I think it's worse than that.
I
There
don't
are
think it's
times
worse.
where like literally it's hard to know exactly who's speaking because it's been a while since you've been updated as to
But
who's
that's
in
not
the
the sentence
scene
structure.
and-
That's the complexity of the book coming into play.
Well, okay, that was an additional example. I'm trying to give you even more ammunition. I'm trying to get myself even more ammunition, as if I wasn't already strung up enough on this. There are times where the sentence structure is weird. It's just awkwardly phrased, and there's like too many commas. I don't have an example offhand, and feel free to kill me on this on Discord.
Well, your ochre example was pretty accurate, so I'll give you props on that.
Yeah. Give me a little bit of credibility here.
Okay.
Anyway, that doesn't take away from it maybe took away a little bit. It obviously did. But I still really love the book. I was way into this book.
I agree. And as we leave, I just want everybody to remember Coltaine and Diker and the chain of dogs and the heroic battle across the desert of Raraku and all that they sacrificed their lives for.
And the associated YouTube video with thematic music
Yes.
that we're going to listen to.
Coltaine.
Then we're going to get our first copyright claim. or
Cue
whatever.
outro. Just,
This is like a For Sparta moment for Ryan.
yes.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Josh. Ryan, this has been a fun review. I think we had fun with this one. We all really liked the book. If you like Phantology, check us out on socials. Check out our Discord. Please join us. Chat with us more. We'd love to have you on our community. And we will see you guys next time. Memories of Ice. I'm not going to promise when the review
This isn't looking great for a 2020 release.
Like, I'm gonna be honest, it's probably not.
Kidding me? What
There's
are we
so
turning into? Patrick Rothfuss here?
no. We've at least read something in the past 6 years.
No, but you're right. I mean, we got like Dresden. We got a sequel to like Rhythm of War. We have
We have
sequel,
Trouble with Peace coming
Trou-
out.
yeah.
There are, let's see, Black Song, which is a lesser known, but that's an Anthony Ryan sequel to the Valinor Sorna series. There's some more too.
The sequel.
There's a Rage of Dragons sequel.
Yeah, sequel to Rage of Dragons, November 10th.
There is the finale of the Poppy War, or maybe the finale. She said she's writing a book for. Anyway, there's a lot. So we got to cover all those things.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll try for a 2020 release, but yeah,
we'll see. Anyway, we can guarantee that there will still be good content coming out from Phantology through the end of the year and onward as we continue to grow. So thanks, Josh, Brian. See you guys next time.
Thanks, Steven.
Bye-bye.